Hey guys, so I decided to make this video and essentially say I'm coming out. And it's not in the traditional term when you hear that sort of saying, but I am coming out completely to talk about mental illness, my experiences with it, because I am so sick to fuck of the stigma about it. And people not really knowing. So I'm just kind of here to tell my story and talk about something that had ensued with me a little bit earlier this year in my own kind of personal adventure with it. So I have dealt with mental illness ever since I can remember. It's literally my DNA. The first time that I was ever hospitalized for mental illness, I was 12 years old. I was hospitalized again at 20 and then again at 23, and very briefly, like at 35, I think. In any event, I had gone through a lot of doctors. I found a incredible psychiatrist that I've been seeing for the last 17 years who has treated me properly with medication, and I'm able to live a very decent life to an extent. So anybody who really knows me or follows me on social media or whatnot knows that I like to ride bikes, specifically BMX bikes. I picked it up at the ripe old age of 37. It was pretty much the only midlife crisis vehicle that I could afford. But I'm really happy I did that because it's been very, very healthy for me. And I pretty much try and do it every single day. I had a really shitty 41st birthday, which was just in July. I had been on a certain medication for, the better half of about 5 years. And I was taking it at night. It was fantastic for sleep. And my dosage just kind of went up a little bit just with time. And the night before my birthday, I forgot to just get my script. No big deal. Shit happens. But in doing that, I woke up. I didn't really sleep well the night before my birthday, and I woke up on my birthday not feeling really well. I was, of course, really, really tired due to only sleeping for a couple of hours, and just felt overall crappy, and that's pretty much the last thing that I remember, which was about 9 a.m. Fast forward to the very next day when I was at a point that I was lucid, but was starting to hallucinate and have visions, and I was very, very disoriented, and I didn't even know what day it was. So at that point in time, I was taken to the ER, and after running a bunch of tests on me, they were able to diagnose me with having gone through psychosis. I had a full-blown psychotic break that lasted about 36 hours, and I remember none of it. Absolutely none of it. And knowing it and having that happen to me was hands down one of the scariest things that has ever happened to me. Mostly just because in my entire 41 years of being alive, I have never had anything like that happen to me. And so after that had happened, and it was it was due in part to having almost just completely detoxed off a certain medication. And I'm not going to say which one it was because it is something that has been exceedingly helpful for a lot of people. But I decided, okay, it was time. I need to go off of this. And so with the help of with my doctor, I decided just started the slow taper process and tapering down. But it was really, really scary for me in the weeks following that sort of thing, because I was so concerned about, of course, something like that happening again. It fucking terrified me. However, I just came to the conclusion that I needed to power through it. I couldn't let that define me, and I didn't want it to define the beginning of my 41st birthday. I didn't want that to be it. So in that happening, I decided that I was going to do something a little bit different. I was going to create my own cocktail, my own medication, my own anti-anxiety regimen, and I was going to do that by challenging myself to get back on my bike, quite literally and figuratively, and I was going to challenge myself to ride my bike every single day for 41 days straight, no days off. And today was day 41. I fucking did it. And in doing so, my anxiety has gone down. I've been able to sleep, and I'm no longer living scared, worried about having something like that happen again. So, and in speaking more about mental illness as well, it really is a lot like riding a bike, because I have found that when you're on your bike and when you're happy and it's carefree and it feels amazing, that's kind of a lot like what life is like. However, ultimately, you're gonna end up wrecking and hurting yourself, and that's a lot like what depression feels like, because in that moment, when you wreck and you hurt yourself, which has happened to me many times, and actually did happen to me a couple times during that 41-day challenge, but you literally and figuratively have to get up, dust yourself off, and get back on the bike. And I have ridden my bike and have literally had blood coming down my arms, my legs, my knees, my nose, and in my hands. I've ridden home with sprains. I rode home with a fractured ankle. I didn't even know. But that's a lot like what depression is like. And because when you're hurt and it feels like shit and you're laying there and you're just can only think about that pain, you don't think about what comes later. And what comes later, of course, is that the wounds will, the bleeding is slowly going to stop, and the wounds are going to heal themselves, and before you know it, it doesn't hurt anymore, and before you know it, you are right back on your bike again and you're happy. And I think that is probably one of the most perfect metaphors that I can think of to describe what life is like living with a mental illness. And I don't think that anybody should be ashamed of it, because it's very much something that is, again, within within your DNA, and it's not something that you can chemically help. It is something that you can try and fix. But most importantly, it's just, there's lifetime medication. Yeah, I am on fucking crazy pills. I really love it when people try and say that to insult me. Real clever. Never heard that before. In any event, and yeah, it helps me live a very good life. And just today more than anything, if anybody is struggling, and if anybody feels like there's not anything to essentially live for anymore, please just remember that that bleeding is going to stop and the pain will subside. There's lots of those who can't get out of that, and that's something else I could go into. It is not selfish. I think that for those who live with mental illness understand that. Those who are lucky enough not to would never understand that. Again, I wanted to make this because I essentially I'm not gonna be in hiding anymore, and I'm just I'm very proud of who I am and what I have been able to accomplish, and I encourage everybody else who lives with anything like that to be proud of themselves too, and try not to ever give up. And there's lots of help out there, lots of people and lots of friends. So if by making this video I can inspire at least one person, then I feel like my job is done. And I'm happy to share my story. So and I'm super stoked for 41, and I can't wait for what the rest of this year has to bring for me. If you've watched this entire thing, thank you. And if anybody who is watching this and doesn't know me, please, feel free to reach out to me if you need anything, because I will always understand. I will always empathize, and we've got to fight this together. That's it, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.